And welcome to Jim Sells the Suncoast. Today, I'm really excited to have Kyle Eitman on from Andrews Insurance. Here, we're going to talk all about the insurance, good, bad, ugly, and all in between. So, Kyle, if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the insurance and what's going on over here with Andrews.
Thanks, Jim, for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. Just to give you myself a little background, everybody on myself, originally born in Michigan, moved down here in Florida 15 years ago. I've always lived in Manatee County, so I've got as I've lived down here and enjoyed the Florida lifestyle, I've definitely gotten to know the area very well. As far as from an insurance perspective, I recently joined the Andrews Insurance Agency.
Mhm.
I've been in insurance for quite a while, but I found an opportunity here at Andrews Insurance where we, as a local trusted insurance resource here, can help provide and give our clients lots of different options to cover their assets.
That's fantastic. And I know with Andrews, you're operating as an insurance broker. So it gives you access to a wide variety of products as opposed to being a lender with just a single company where they have some great products, but that's what you're limited to.
Definitely. I think, again, that's what really does set us apart. Not only do we have the local hometown feeling of the agency here, but we're
Mhm.
also working with so many different carriers. And living here in Florida, one of the things is insurance changes all the time, right? And so
Right.
having all of those different contacts, those companies that we can work with, gives us an opportunity to work with any client in any situation.
Fantastic. Let's jump right in. And I want to focus from the buyer's journey. The first question: what's the biggest misconception buyers have about homeowner insurance in Florida?
Wow. I think the biggest misconception that people have is just what the real cost of insurance is down here. There's obviously a lot of new homes that are getting built right now, especially in this area that living around here. And so with people when they're coming down and they're having different options, right? Do they want to go with the new construction where the insurance is less, or do they want to go the more traditional older style house, right? One of those things that people forget about with Florida is that you have the hurricane portion of your policy, right? So it's different for people that have never lived in the coastal area before.
Mhm.
That has that whole new added portion to their policy, right? Where now they have to pay for coverage for what if a hurricane comes. So to me, I think that's the biggest sticker shock that a lot of people see, especially when they're buying homes. People that are transplanting from other states down here is they get that sticker shock a little bit of the insurance because maybe you do find something that's nice, that's a little bit older, that's not in a community, right? Maybe it's 40 or 50 years old, but the problem is because of that age and when it was what it was built with materials and all that kind of stuff, that adds to that cost, especially for that hurricane coverage. So to me, I
Mhm.
think one of the biggest shocks that people will see when they're looking at their insurance is, again, what is that hurricane cost and coverage for my policy?
Yeah, I think most of us not in the industry come in thinking I get insurance that's going to cover everything. And that's not really the case, right? You need to have different points on there, whether it's your hurricane deductible, which is separate, your home insurance, potentially flood insurance. The list can go on.
I think you bring up a great point, especially about the flood insurance. There's a lot of times where I see people talk and discuss about, oh, we're not in a high risk flood zone. And that's true. Florida is very unique, right? Where as it relates to how everything's so close to sea level and things like that, that there really is the whole entire state is a flood zone, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's going to vary whether you're closer to the coast and things like that. But a lot of times people are unaware, and especially now that we've had more big storms coming in, that flooding can extend easily into those areas. And so there's a lot of times where people, because they get that feeling of 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 year flood zone, that I don't really need to have flood insurance. That when those times come and they do flood, now they're exposed and they don't have coverage for that. Because again, that's not part of the traditional homeowners insurance policy.
So, at what point in the home buying process should a buyer start shopping for insurance?
Thank you. All right.
At what point in the home buying process should a buyer start shopping for insurance?
To me, I think it's right at the beginning, right when you get under contract, right? You don't want any surprises up front when you have that 10-day window. You want to make sure you get your inspections done. And you want to make sure that the numbers match up from the lending perspective, right? Especially if you're financing. So again, for our clients, we always suggest as soon as you get under contract, reach out to your insurance person, reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you a quote within one business day, just so you have some numbers that you can work with to better understand what it's going to cost to put protection on that new home.
What information does an insurance company need to provide an accurate quote?
Again, it's just going to just depend on the age of the home, right? New construction, a lot of times we as the insurance companies are going to be able to pull a lot of the information on there on the county assessor website and things like that. But for some of the older homes, especially anything maybe 15, 20 years or older, 4-point inspections are really good. Wind mitigation inspections are also going to be really good as well too, because again, the 4 points, those are going to focus on the main areas of the house where there could be a potential insurance risk, right? Making sure those are in order. And then the wind mitigation, right? That's a very important piece because, again, when we talk about the hurricane deductible and cost for hurricane coverage, one of the easiest ways that clients, especially with older homes, can try to bring that down is having that wind mitigation report so it can track all the different potential credits.
And then you talked about some of them, but what are the biggest factors that determine a home insurance's premium? You talked about the 4 points. So each one of those, roof, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, the wind mits, so we're looking at potential, nobody wants their home damaged. So what new codes are all the time to help prevent that. So what are the biggest factors?
One of the things that people don't realize sometimes is the age of the water heater. That can actually have a huge impact on things. There's other things that we've seen as far as the electrical and updating it, the plumbing as well too. So again, some of the plumbing that it may be even very outdated, right? Does that need to get updated to get approved? Those are things that I think would need to be, all right, let's try it again.
So what are the biggest factors that determine home insurance premium? And we've talked about the 4 point, whether that's roof, plumbing, electrical, or HVAC, the wind mitigation, homes built up to new codes versus old codes. What's going to drive that premium?
A lot of it's going to come down to the age of the home, right? What are the exterior materials? What is it, stucco? What's the roof like, right? Is it an asphalt roof or is it tile or is it metal? A lot of those things play into it as well. One thing that a lot of people don't realize sometimes with the homeowners insurance and what the companies are looking at as well too is the age of the water heater. Again, traditionally for insurance companies, because again, with water heaters, if they ever burst or anything like that, it can cause flooding to happen in the house. And traditionally, the age for most water heaters, especially in Florida, is about anywhere from 8 to 12 years. So for people that are looking at buying a house or wanting to obtain insurance on their home, that's really one of the biggest things that insurance companies is looking for that people probably don't realize.
What are some of the insurance questions buyers should ask before they buy a home?
I think the biggest questions they should ask are, have there been any major updates to the home since they purchased it, right? Now, if it's a new construction or newer home, not really going to be that big of a deal. But again, some of these older homes and things like that, have there been any structural upgrades or changes to the home? Has there been any changes or upgrades, again, to the major points of the house, whether it be electrical, plumbing, HVAC, things like that? What's the age of the roof? Again, I think those are all very important questions. Flooding as well too. Has there ever been a time where you've been concerned about a flood maybe intruding in your property over the last however long you've lived there for?
Right. I know when we had Debbie a couple of years ago, lots of flooding instances that were in quote unquote no flood areas that were flooded out. So asking those questions, hey, has there ever been a flood in this area? And then what was the extent of the damage?
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember that just even going through that experience myself with Hurricane Debbie is, going outside and seeing all that flooding just in my own property. I lived in a brand new neighborhood, right? And one of the biggest things is now that we're seeing more of these developments and more of these communities being built is now it takes away opportunities for water to be able to move away.
Right.
So there's nowhere for that water to go. So what happens? It starts building up and then you start potentially creating flooding problems.
Are there any upgrades that a buyer can make after purchasing a home that might lower their insurance costs? And I know We're going to have some of those where your water heater is 12 or 15 years old, maybe buy a new one. But are there any common items that someone can buy that would help reduce that?
The biggest thing is just taking, again, depending on the age of the roof and how it's attached to the home and things like that. There could be simple things where you add the traditional, they call it the third nail, or maybe if it's attached with toenails and creating clips or single wraps or things like that. Those could be things that could be done after that could help, again, lower that cost of the insurance premium. Now, again, that's traditionally going to be on more on older homes and not newer ones, because the newer ones are going to be built more up to code and where the standard is. But if someone's acquiring a property that's a little bit older, those are some smaller things that they can do that can help keep some of that cost down there.
Let's look a little bit from the seller's point of view then. What insurance related issues should sellers be addressing before putting their home on the market?
Are there any structural cracks, or are there anything that the buyer would need to be aware of that could create an issue with the insurance carrier? Again, simple things like what the buyer would look for, right? What's the age of the roof? So my roof is an asphalt shingle roof, 15 years old. It's probably close or past its lifespan for most insurance companies. So what happens if I have somebody that's interested in, oh, my insurance company won't insure it because of the age of the roof? Do I have to make an adjustment or a concession in my agreement to accommodate for some of that cost? Again, water heater. Some of those are smaller things, again, but from an insurance standpoint, it is important. And sometimes it can hinder people from getting an insurance policy. So if you're a seller, again, you need to be aware of some of those things, because the buyer and their agent may come back and say, hey, here's what we found this issue. We're finding that insurance is hard to get or it's more expensive. So what can we do to make the situation right?
That may be a great suggestion for somebody who's thinking about selling is call their agent and say, hey, looking at our house and you know what it's covering, anything that would stand out if I were going to buy it right now under these conditions.
Exactly. I think that the best thing that an agent can do for their customer is to bring the awareness to some of those points of thinking from the buyer standpoint. If the buyer is going to acquire this and they're going to get insurance, what do you think the insurance company is going to look for? Because again, a lot of people, they may keep the same insurance company for years and years and years. And a lot of times, even though that roof may be older than what the insurance company is allowing for new business, they're continuing to do the policy with the customer because the customer has been there for a long time and they're willing to take on that risk. So it's a different perspective from where the buyer's coming from, where it would be new business, even though it's on the same house, because they're going to say, well, now we're going to insure it where this only has so many years left on it. And then it could be a huge risk.
Now, for current homeowners, how often should they review their insurance policy and what should trigger a review?
To me, I feel like one of the benefits of working with our agency, and I'll just talk about us just really briefly, is that because we were connected with so many different carriers, every year we help our clients and we give them the option. Do you want us to shop your insurance around to see if there's something comparable coverage wise and all of that at a little bit lower rate? So you have that flexibility there because it does change. In Florida, we've seen over the years, right, that insurance companies come and go and things change a lot. Risk tolerances change with insurance companies from year to year. So sometimes for us, I always say to our clients, it doesn't hurt to check once a year and give yourself peace of mind that at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is you're already in the best spot.
Good. All right. What are some of the biggest mistakes homeowners make that could leave them underinsured?
For me, it's making sure, obviously, that you have things like replacement cost for some of your most valuable things, like your roof, right? What happens if something happens to your roof during a storm and you have to get it replaced? Do you want it to be at a depreciated value, or do you want it to be replaced for what the actual value of the roof is? In insurance, people sometimes don't realize that if you take the depreciated value, it helps lower your insurance costs. But if the roof continues to get older and it's at the end of its life cycle, and that's when it has to be repaired by the insurance company, that value is diminished so much that you end up only getting a fraction of what the actual cost is of the roof. When you have the replacement cost on your roof, now you're getting the money back for the actual cost of the roof. and not depreciated. So again, it costs a little bit more on the policy, but when you think about it in the long run, it's going to save you a lot more money, especially if you have to get that roof replaced.
Right.
I think, just another area as well, too, when we talk about coverage is personal contents, right? There's a lot of people you can get the depreciated value. Again, just like the roof, you can get depreciated value on your contents. It helps keep the insurance policy and the premium down. But from a replacement standpoint, if you bought a brand new chair, do you want if something happens to that brand new chair that you bought, do you want to get back the full price that you paid for it? Or do you want to get the price back of what it cost 7 years after depreciation?
Are there any discounts that many homeowners don't realize they're eligible for?
Definitely burglary alarms. If they have something set up, probably beyond just a Ring camera, but something that has detectors or sensors, any sort of security. You have your gated areas as well too. So if you live in a gated community, whether it's patrolled or has key card access, that's where you could have a discount. If you have any sort of fire monitoring in the house, that could also provide a discount as well for most homeowners.
What should homeowners know about filing claims? When does it make sense to file one, and when might it be better not to?
This is a great question because I think a lot of people get the misconception of something happens and I have to go start the claim process right away, right? And that could be a big mistake. And I could use my own personal experience from Hurricane Milton just as a guideline of what I tell my customers, right? Fortunately, most of our house survived, but we did lose some of the siding on our house. So when we took a look at it, we have to replace it. How much is it going to cost? Well, it costs X amount of dollars. Well, how does that compare to where the premium was, or not the premium, excuse me, the deductible was for my hurricane on my policy, right? Well, that cost is way up here, which means that I would have to pay, let's say, $9,000 out of my own pocket before the insurance kicked in, where the real cost to replace the siding was more like $3,000, right? So I think the best thing I would tell clients is before you file a claim, try to get a good assessment of what the damage is. Now, if your roof's blown off your house, I don't think you're going to have a hard time figuring out that you met whatever that price is, right? But as you're looking at just anything with the house, always get, at least I would say, a couple different opinions if you can right away, just to get an assessment. Because again, once you put a claim on your policy, then that when insurance companies are reviewing not only the one that you're with, but in the future, if you change, they look at that claim history, right? And that also makes a determination on what your premium is for your homeowner's insurance going forward. So again, I would say try to, before you file a claim, get an idea, assess what the actual damage is, try to get an estimate of how much that would cost, and then go back to your policy and say, hey, if it's a hurricane related thing, what's my deductible? What's my cost out of pocket going to be before the insurance would kick in? If it's a non-hurricane related thing, what's my deductible there? And if I pay less than the deductible than what it costs to repair it, then maybe it would make sense then at that point to put in a claim. But again, don't put in a claim until you have a really good idea of what that true cost is going to be to take care of the issue.
With hurricanes always a concern here on the Suncoast, what should every homeowner do before storm season to protect their home and the insurance claim if something happens?
To me, I feel like the biggest thing is take pictures, right? Always take pictures of the exterior, but especially take pictures of the interior, right? Again, if you're going to make a claim and you're going to say, hey, I need all this stuff replaced, the insurance company is going to say, well, what's the stuff, right? So having those pictures, having those documented, making sure that you have a copy of your policy, whether you can have access electronically or if you have a paper copy and store it in a safe place, just like you would with all of your other documents. And then again, obviously making sure that you take the proper precautions. So whether that you need to put sandbags in front of your entryways to make sure that there's no water that's coming inside, making sure you're putting up your hurricane shutters if you have them, and getting things like that in place, bringing in anything that's loose and that's not attached, whether it be trampoline or just anything that could blow away in a big windstorm. those are just things just to make sure that you have taken care of in a timely manner, because again, things change very fast. You want to be able to make sure you take action right away.
All right. So I've got a couple of questions here. We'll call this not really a rapid fire. We'll call it semi-rapid fire.
Okay.
Myth or fact, filing one claim automatically gets you dropped.
That's a myth, actually. Again, it's all going to depend on the claim and things like that, what
Right.
happened with the situation. But more times than not, filing claims not going to get you automatically dropped by the carrier.
Myth or fact, new construction always has the cheapest insurance.
That's fact.
Okay.
Again, when you take a look at the factors of insurance costs and things like that, and replacement costs,
Right.
It's a lot easier to get an idea that there's homes newer, there's less of a risk. We have an idea of what that cost is going to be versus with older homes and things like that. Traditionally, you're going to pay more insurance because if something big has to get replaced, it's going to cost a lot of money to do that.
Yep. And I think people forget too that newer stuff is usually built to newer code, so that can make a difference in material and what they're doing.
Exactly. That's right. Again, everything nowadays is built to code. That's why insurance companies can offer those discounts and those rates. So again,
Right.
it's always going to be the newer homes are going to have the lower cost for insurance.
All right. Is flood insurance worth it if you're not in a flood zone?
Fact, again, we talked about earlier, flood is not a covered issue with homeowners insurance. So again, you may not live in a traditional flood zone or a high risk flood zone, but all it takes is one event. We talked about Hurricane Debbie earlier. All it could take is one big thunderstorm, right? Something to happen again where it creates that localized flooding where water isn't able to move around, that puts that home at risk. So to me, I think it's worth it. One of the differences is that, again, you don't have to get it covered. You don't have to buy flood coverage for the entire value of the home or for the entire amount of contents in there. You can put it in for a portion, right? Because that also is going to be dependent as well, too. Because if you think about a 2-story home, right, the flooding is probably going to more or less occur on the first floor, but the second floor probably is going to stay intact and nothing major happened to it. So from my perspective and what we tell all of our clients and when we quote business with our clients is we provide a companion flood policy, even if they live in an X zone, because again, we want to make sure that we're insuring them for the most catastrophic situation. And again, we talked about how flood is just one of those things that's just overlooked because again, people just believe a lot of times, maybe true or not, that flooding really only happens on the coast because of things like storm surge and things like that. But it's not. Again, with storms that have happened over the last few years and whatnot, it's proven that it's not just the people that live closer to the coastline that have the potential to be impacted. It's people that live in the inland areas that could be impacted as well too.
Right. It's that we have flood zone X. That doesn't mean it isn't. There's no flood zone. It's called the flood zone for a reason. So what's one thing every Florida homeowner should do this month?
Hopefully be able to relax for a little bit and enjoy the time and not have to worry about hurricanes or anything like that. Again, I think it's just making sure that from a hurricane perspective that you have things in place. So making sure you have things for electrical, make sure that you're doing your HVAC maintenance, right? Those are big things because again, if you get backed up in the HVAC system, it could create potential issues with that impact the house. I can't really think of anything else.
I think you're spot on there. It's the time to get ready. Once the storm's coming, it's already too late. You got other things to worry about. You take your time now and do it right. Like you said, pictures, get all your documents, have everything together, put them in a plastic baggie or store them somewhere that's safe that you can access so that when the time comes, you're going to want quick access to it, not try to figure out where it is at that point.
Exactly.
All right. As we close out here, if you could give every buyer one piece of advice before closing, what would it be?
I would always say just shop for as many options as you can or find a broker just like us right here at Andrews Insurance Agency where we do a lot of the legwork for you, right? Again, we're appointed with so many different strongly financially rated companies here in the state of Florida that we can look and find the right, not only the cost, but make sure that we have the appropriate coverage as well too. So take a look at all your different options. There's so many different ones that are out there now. Fortunately, the insurance market is continuing to expand. the state is starting to bring in some new carriers as well to bring more competition to the state and give homeowners more options as well too. So that would be the biggest thing I would say.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. Really appreciate you coming on here today, kind of walking through all the different options we have, because there are a lot of options, and that's why it makes sense to go with a professional. There's a lot that we could do on our own, but we don't have that guidance. So reach out. I'll have all your contact information in the show notes, and I really appreciate you coming on and spending that time today.
Thank you.